Good afternoon, everybody. DJ Styles here at Custom Corpses. Okay, I'm doing something I don't think anybody has been doing. This is a little unique. And let me open up what I'm using here. All right, first of all, I'm trying to do this with my hands full. So, all right, well, basically, I use this. It's called I got this at Biddy Mold. It's called molding wax. And what you do is I'm going to make a polyurethane master out of my mold here. But in the process of doing that, I destroy this mold by doing this to the mold. You put a, excuse me, you put a coat, a thin coat of this molding wax all over. I brush it in there and I make sure it's all over the entire mold. And right now it's drying. I wait about a half hour for it to dry. And I even do up in here, because I'm going to have to put a thin layer of rubber on this as well on both halves. See, that's the first half of the mold. That's the second half of the mold. They've both been paste waxed. All right. And why you have to paste wax is because polyurethane will stick to that concrete, or that, I wouldn't say concrete, but plaster. It will stick to it like you will never believe. So the process is you put the paste wax on here. That creates a nice barrier, so there's no moisture being pulled out of the rubber. All right. Sorry, my neighbors got their generator fired up. And then the next process is I have to put a release agent onto the mold on the inside, and it's called Poly-Ease 2650. And I release this, and that makes it so the rubber doesn't stick to it. Completely makes it very easy to get out of the mold. And this is the rubber. It's a two-part rubber. It's a Poly 7420, part A and part B, as you can see. And you mix them half and half. And what I'll probably do is mix about a quarter of this, a quarter of each one of these, right down to where the sticker is. I'll pour out about that much, right down to where the sticker is on each bottle. But I got to do it by weight, so it has to be accurate. So it's 50-50. Whatever I add to it, I got to double it. And I weigh it, by scale. And then I'll mix it vigorously, and I'll pour it in here. And then I'm going to make sure I brush it into all the details and all the, the entire area. Make sure it's no air bubbles or no pockets that didn't get covered. And I'll even put a barrier inside here. All right. And then I'll stick the other half of the mold on top of that. I'll flip this thing upside down, and I'll put the mold strap on it. And then I will mix the rest of the rubber, and I have to put a poly fiber in it. All right. The poly fiber makes it so it's nice and thick, and when this thing's upside down, I'll be able to pull that thick rubber up against the walls of the mask and make sure that all the cavities are filled, and it's a nice thick rubber. We want it to be thick because it is a master copy, and you want it to last for years. But the biggest trick is you have to make sure that you don't have any air bubbles of any kind. So that's what I'm doing, and I'll show you the next process as I do the Poly-Ease. Let's just brush that on. That's all you're doing is brushing that on. Yeah, maybe I'll just get right to the rubber. I'll start doing it from the rubber. You don't really need to see me putting Poly-Ease on this. This is just putting a coat of, with a brush, putting a coat of that Poly-Ease on on both sides, so the rubber doesn't stick to this. So it's a two-part process with making sure that I seal this concrete really well, because if you don't seal it really good, that rubber will stick to this concrete, and if it sticks, forget it, it's done. You literally have to cast another mold, and I am not in the business to do things twice. So I am definitely going to get this right the first time around. I already put the wax in there, nice and thick and heavy. It's drying. I can see where the spots are that are still a little wet. See how the nose is a little darker on the inside, and the eyebrows are a little darker. It's still got to dry a little bit more. And when when those areas are a little bit brighter, I will start putting the poly E's on, and then the rubber. So I'll skip the poly E's. You don't need necessarily see that. I just explained to you what I'm doing with that. The whole thing has to be released on both sides. The poly rubber is where I'll show you what I'm doing with that. That'll be the next step. And when I do the poly rubber, I make sure I got a really nice brush, because you don't want streaks of your hair brushes. And make sure that you pull real good on all these fibers to make sure there's no loose hairs coming out of your brush. On any brush that you use, when you're dealing with this kind of stuff, you definitely don't want to have any you don't want little hair follicles in your mold, because it can ruin your mold. Anyway, that's what I'm doing today. What are you doing today? It's a beautiful day out here. I mean, it is absolutely stunningly beautiful out here today. So taking advantage of nice cool weather, and I'm going to make my master mold, my master mask. So, and the purpose of making a master, if I didn't say this already, is this stuff doesn't shrink like latex. Latex shrinks. I literally, this mold, when I put a latex mask in this, when I put latex in this and I pull it out, the latex mask, even with the foam in it, shrunk 2 inches in diameter. It went from 32 inches in diameter all the way down to 30 inches in diameter, which is still big. But now I'll always have a copy of the master mold. That's the whole point, the original size. I can make as small as I want. The key is I have to keep that original size. And that original size is always going to be made out of a polyurethane rubber, because that will last forever. And when you apply it in here, it stays the exact same size as your original mold. And that's what you want. You don't want your mold shrinking on you unless you're doing it on purpose to make smaller versions of your mask. That's the secret. That's what I'm doing. And that's why I'm doing it. I want a polyurethane thick rubber casting for making more molds. You make other molds with that. That's what you do with it. So whenever I cast a concrete, or not concrete, I keep saying concrete, sorry, it's Ultra Cal 30. It's a extra really hard plaster. It's the hardest in the business. It holds the detail the best too. So with that being said, I'll be able to make numerous copies, because you only get about 20 pulls. I'm sorry, when I say this, when I make a mold like this, you get about 20 pulls, probably because it's a Michael Myers mask. There's not a lot of detail, cracks and crevices. I could probably get about 30 pulls before this plaster starts to break down and you start losing some detail. So what I'll do is I get about 30 masks out of that, and then I have to remold. I have to make another mold, and that's why you make a master copy, so you can make that mold from that master copy. That's the polyurethane. So that's the whole purpose of this, making a master mold for future castings. You know, so that's it. You guys have a wonderful day, a wonderful weekend. And I'll see you on the next part when I start applying. Well, you're not going to see the poly-E's, but you will see me do the rubber. All right, peace. See you in a few.